Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, the politics is growing over the policy. BC's decriminalization pilot is drawing more criticism and calls to roll it back. Advocates warn, though, it needs more time. CBC's provincial affairs reporter Meera Bains will join me, and we're asking you, should BC reverse course on decriminalization? In about half an hour, we'll talk about modern etiquette, whether online or in real life. What are your own etiquette dilemmas, your own do's and don'ts? You can call us on that. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And you can call us now on our top story. Should BC reverse course on decriminalization? Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Well, pressure is mounting on the BC government to scrap its 3-year pilot to decriminalize some hard drugs. Criticism has been loud from opposition parties in the legislature, and a number of city councillors are also now urging the premier to abandon the policy. Just 1 year into the pilot project, the debate over decriminalization is becoming heated and political. Advocates say it reduces stigma against drug users and is saving lives, preventing people from using alone indoors. 14,000 people have died since toxic drug deaths were declared a public health emergency in BC. But opponents say it's not working, as deaths are still growing, and along with that, a rise in street disorder and crime. They would rather see a focus on treatment. Premier David Eby admits they're looking at options. Now, we'd like to hear from you right now. Should BC reverse course on decriminalization? What are your concerns about the debate right now? You can call us again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. As I mentioned, the debate is becoming political. On CBC's The Early Edition this morning, Stephen Quinn heard BC United leader Kevin Falcon's thoughts on the province's approach.
Part of their ideology is the belief that we need to destigmatize and not have people feel stigmatized by using drugs. Well, I just fundamentally disagree with that. We banned smoking when I was in government as part of an earlier BC United, then BC Liberal government. We said no more smoking in restaurants, nightclubs, office buildings, etc. So yes, we are stigmatizing people. They have to go outside and smoke in the cold, etc. But the goal behind it was to say we as a society do not want to encourage more smoking of cigarettes, and it worked.
But smoking by themselves in the cold isn't going to kill them.
Well, yeah, but we have 16,000 people a year dying of lung cancer, primarily.
Right, but that's not. We're talking about different things here, Kevin.
Yeah, well, no, but look at the results that we're seeing right now. So I was just in downtown last night at the Chinese Cultural Center. Everywhere you go, people slumped over. You can't tell if they're unconscious or dead. It's just horrific what's going on in society. So things are not getting better, Stephen. In fact, they've gotten markedly worse.
Meanwhile, this expert argues turning back now will cause harm. Cora DeBeck is a professor at SFU's School of Public Policy.
The alternative to decriminalization, if we roll back and take it away, is criminalization. And it's going back to an approach that we know has failed time and time again. It's costly. It causes huge amounts of harm in our communities to individuals. So I think it's a really bad idea.
That's Cora DeBeck, a professor at SFU's School of Public Policy. We are asking you, should BC reverse course on decriminalization? And we have Krista on the line from Parksville. Hi, Krista. Good afternoon.
Oh, excuse me. Hi, I'm just eating my lunch.
Good time for it, Kristen. My apologies. Thanks so much for calling.
No worries. I heard Kevin Falcon this morning, and I think that it needs to be said that all of the pundits who are saying that decrim causes people to smoke in hospitals and use drugs in public places, etc., I think are missing the point. And just as I said to your the person that answered the phone, we have some crazy liquor laws in BC, but they are laws. They're laws that restrict how, where, when, and why to use liquor.
Okay.
And I think that we can apply the same thing to drugs. Decriminalization does not mean that we have no control over where and how people use drugs in public places.
So regulating it.
Well, yeah. I mean, we regulate smoking. We regulate the use of alcohol to a ridiculous point in some cases. Some of those laws are federal, like the advertising ones. You can be pictured in an ad sitting at a table with a beer, but you can't be pictured drinking it.
Okay.
Some of the laws, granted, they're a little archaic, but they are laws. They are rules and regulations. So to say that we have absolutely no control over people possessing small amounts of opioids is ridiculous. It's completely missing the point.
Okay, so you're saying keep the pilot program, introduce some of those laws that we have seen for other substances.
Yes,
Okay.
I've never believed that addiction and use of control, particularly the opioid crisis right now, is criminal. I think that the whole war on drugs, etc. I see it as a health problem, a mental health problem, a health problem. Period. And decriminalizing, as you just quoted somebody saying that decriminalizing is criminalizing, and that's true. So let's keep it decriminalized. Let's not call it a criminal offense, but let's regulate it to the point of reason.
Kristen, thanks so much for the call. Enjoy your lunch, okay?
You're so welcome. Thanks.
Chris is next now in Burnaby. And what are your thoughts on where the province is right now and calls to roll back on decriminalization, Chris?
Hi. Yeah, I think it's really kind of disingenuous for folks to kind of frame this as, well, decriminalization is not solving the problem, because I think that it never was intended to solve a problem other than to prevent folks from being harassed by police when they're using substances. It's just to make their lives a little bit less awful. And I don't think it really has much to do with stigma even. I mean, in a sense...
That's stigma
really
though, right?
I think it maybe stigma's part of it, but also, the government didn't even put in place the recommended guideline amount. They went with a lower amount than was recommended by experts. So here we've got this kind of piecework solution. This is sort of the least they can do, and they didn't even do the least. And folks are now saying, well, it's not working. Well, it's part of a package of solutions that could actually make a difference. But if you kind of implement one tiny piece and not even what was recommended and then say, well, it's not working, it doesn't really seem like a good reason to take it away.
What would you like to see the province do now then?
I mean, I think it's definitely move forward, have more decriminalization, have spaces where people can use safely. I mean, if we look at alcohol, I mean, I often kind of bring this example for folks. Well, when you consume alcohol, you know that it's safe because you buy it from a safe place. There's tons of rules, regulations about how you can use alcohol, when you shouldn't use it. We even have safe consumption sites for alcohol, bars, restaurants. None of that exists. And so when we look at other drugs as being more harmful, we kind of have to ask ourselves, like, of course it's more difficult and less safe to use other substances because we don't have any of the infrastructure that makes it, something that's safe and fun to do.
Okay. Chris, thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
You take care. That's Chris in Burnaby. 12:14 now here on BC Today. We're asking you, should the province reverse course on decriminalization? 1 year into the pilot project that decriminalizes personal possession of some illicit drugs, there are calls, growing criticism from opposition parties, and 3 councillors have been saying to the province to roll it back. This was just in the last couple of days. And so as that scrutiny increases, we're asking you what BC should do now. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Well, joining me from Victoria is CBC's provincial affairs reporter, Meera Bains. Hi, Meera.
Hi, Michelle.
You have been covering this, day in and day out at the legislature. Can you take us through the week that's been, the couple of weeks that's been, and what's being said about this pilot project?
Sure, Michelle. It's important to know that this is the first week back from break week. And during break week, that's when chiefs of police, VPD, Deputy Chief Fiona Wilson, as well as the head of BC RCMP, also testified in front of a House of Commons Health Committee about how decriminalization is going. And basically, they said that they do not have the authority in many cases to get people to move along if they're using illicit drugs in public spaces. Now, some of those places include bus stops, building entrances, and they said that is a real cause for concern because they don't have those tools. And so this was very serious testimony. And so this week, at the beginning of the week, we heard that 3 city councillors, one for Richmond, Surrey, and New Westminster, are also calling for the end of decriminalization, as well as the opposition parties, BC United and the BC Conservatives, who have been calling for this for several months. And so this week, we also heard from Mental Health and Addictions Minister Jennifer Whiteside, who said that there would be an evaluation report coming from a third party, but she didn't say whether that report would be made public before, or if it would be made public, but before a possible election. So these things have been sort of swirling every day in question period. We do hear from MLAs who are calling for the end of decriminalization, in particular BC United MLA Eleanor Sturko. But so far, the government is sticking to its guns.
And what are its options right now then for the province?
Yeah, so there are a number of options, and I think one of them was brought up by the VPD Deputy Chief to the House of Commons Committee. And basically, Fiona Wilson told them that they could get another exception under the Health Canada exemption, which allows for the decriminalization pilot. So basically, recriminalizing illicit drug use in certain areas. But that gets quite complicated. So you're recriminalizing the use of these drugs at bus stops and public entrances, but yet it's decriminalized in other areas. So that's one option. The other option is also to end the decriminalization pilot. And so that's one of the options that the province might be looking at, but or it might not be. We can't really tell at this point. We do know that the Premier has said that they are looking at other options on this issue. And so when we have a federal election coming up as well, the Conservatives are doing well in the polls. So let's just say, for argument's sake, the federal Conservatives come into power. Are they going to end decriminalization anyways? So is this a chance for the BC government to act? I believe Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about this last week, whether the federal government will end decriminalization. And he said the ball is basically in BC's court, that BC requested the pilot. So really, it's up to the province now.
Let's take a call here. My guest, Meera Bains, is CBC's provincial affairs reporter. She joins me from the legislature in Victoria, and we're taking your calls on this. What are your thoughts? What should BC do now? Meera went through some of the options possible there. We don't know what the province will do, but amid these calls from opposition parties, from some municipal councillors, should BC reverse course on decriminalization? What are your concerns about the debate as it stands right now? And Donald is joining us from Vancouver. Hi, Donald. Good afternoon.
Oh, hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, what do you think the province should do?
Geez, honestly, I think the longer that this goes on, that this decriminalization madness carries on, the harder it's going to be to go back, which they're going to have to inevitably do. Just like Oregon, they recriminalized it, but it's not like turning off a faucet. It's going to take a long time to try to get things back to a livable standard. Personally, I own a restaurant in the downtown area. I had an extremely disturbing incident happen just 1 week ago. We have a family come to our place for 8 years in a row now. They're from Australia. They now have a 1 and 3 year old. It was 6 p.m, broad daylight. There was a guy came in, a younger guy, customer, ate a little bit, had a drink. He was in the washroom suddenly for a long time. We only have one washroom. He came out. He looked rather disoriented, so I went and checked the washroom. It was It's a huge cloud of smoke in there. I went and asked him, and he told me he was smoking fentanyl in there. This is right beside where this 1 and 3-year-old kid are sitting, playing around, you know, and I don't know what how much we're supposed to take, how much the average person is supposed to handle of this kind of thing before, you know, it's too much. Something like that. You know, is it worth the life of a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old? You know, is it worth their
What
their
were you?
brains being
And
altered?
I imagine that for the family that can be quite
Or for myself,
unsettling.
or for
But
my
I'm wondering
staff,
what you mean by safety there.
or for anyone. I mean by safety, but I mean walking into a cloud of fentanyl smoke. He told me he was smoking fentanyl in there. He admitted. He said, "Yeah, I have pain." I said, "Why couldn't you do it outside?" He just shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know what to say. He was extremely ashamed of himself. These people talk about how stigma is the enemy, stigma is the boogeyman, stigma is the murderer. You know, I think that itself is an absolute psyop. I don't think anybody truly believes that stigmatizing something that's deadly and harmful and ruins lives is actually what's hurting people. I think it's there's just too much contradictory to common sense to flooding the streets with drugs, to spending billions of dollars. You know, there's a publicly traded company called Safe Supply streaming company. They brag about $336 billion a year in profits they
Thank
can
you
make.
very much, Donald. You've told us the story there. I'm just going to stop you there because we do have other calls. Thank you so much for your call. And I'm just, your point is taken about what you observed at your restaurant last week and the impact that had on you, and your thoughts around decriminalization and having the taps flow and how difficult it would be to go back. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to jump in there, but I do need to move on to some other callers here as well. John is up next in Cranbrook. Hi, John.
Hello.
Thanks so much for the call, John. And what are your thoughts? What should the province do on decriminalization?
I'm not completely sure. I don't have the answers for decriminalization. Part of the reason I wanted to call was I think that the government and the RCMP are not doing their job when it comes to eliminating these dangerous drugs. You can decriminalize or you can give it to them straight up, but when it's coming in from whatever country and people don't even know that they're ingesting it sometimes. That was an unfortunate situation that happened with my little brother, and he passed away at the age of 35. But the government and the police are not doing enough to take down the people that are bringing these drugs into our country and to our province and then distributing them. And they'll organized crime. I don't need to mention any names. Everybody knows who these people are. Like one question I've always wondered is, and I might be wrong on this, but if I've been told that it's actually illegal to be a part of a member or a member of an organized crime group. So anybody that flies their colors, they should just be arrested.
You're very concerned about
the problem.
Yeah, the source itself, like yeah.
And so our government and our health services and our healthcare workers, bless them all, they're doing an incredible job. But as long as this continuous flow of illegal substances comes in here, there's no hope to change it, in my opinion.
John, I'm so sorry for your loss.
It's happened to lots of other people too. So everybody educate everybody and for the love of God, stay away from that stuff.
John, I appreciate your call.
That's all I got to say, really. Unless you got any questions for me.
I will leave it there. I'm sure it took a lot for you to call in to share that. Thanks
That's
so
all
much.
good. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's John in Cranbrook. Really appreciate these calls. Right now, Meera Bains is with us, CBC's provincial affairs reporter. Let's perhaps wrap up here, Meera, with the politics. We are heading into a provincial election. How much focus will there be on decriminalization and the toxic drug crisis, do you think?
I would argue this is one of the biggest issues in the province right now. You have a lot of communities across British Columbia that are struggling to deal with the opioid crisis as well as public disorder. And so there are a number of issues. And so as we head towards an election, we do see, a lot of the conversations in the legislature, a lot of questions surrounding decriminalization really ramping up. So people are wondering whether there's going to be some action on this before the end of session, which is mid-May. We do know that the federal mental health and addictions minister will be meeting with her BC counterpart here, actually in Vancouver on Friday. So we're wondering whether there's going to be some outcomes out of that as well. But yeah, it is a massive issue. And so with the election coming up, the provincial election in October, is there a chance we're going to see some action?
Certainly a massive issue, as just basing it on the number of calls and emails that we're getting. Meera, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Meera Bains is CBC's provincial affairs reporter. It's 12:27 now, 1:27 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today. And we do have a lot of emails coming in to our email inbox as well. Denis writes, criminalization has driven illicit drug providers to make the supply more potent and deadly. Decades of failure does not deter politicians from pursuing this failed policy. Drug supplies change. Maybe the pilot program needs adjustment, but it's crazy to cancel it. Judith writes, the criminals are the dealers. The victims, users, need mental health resources, treatment, and follow-up. Time to open up Riverview or a place like that far from the city. Putting nurses into the position of giving illicit drugs to patients is not the solution and just increases stress for hospital staff. Diana writes, I agree with Kristen from Burnaby. The people who are hospitalized, I think Kristen called from Parksville, people who are hospitalized should obey the rules of the hospital so as to protect the nurses and staff. I say prohibit all of it around hospitals. Why is this allowed to be around families on a beach or in a park? And if children are exposed to these vapors and behavior, is this going to influence them going forward? Certainly an array of opinions and thoughts. You can keep them coming to BC Today at cbc.ca. As you heard from Meera there, BC's Mental Health and Addictions Minister Jennifer Whiteside will be meeting with her federal counterpart this Friday in Vancouver. We'll make sure to cover that for you here on CBC, and a lot more, of course, on this issue on our website, cbc.ca/BC. You can catch more on the coast and other afternoon shows as well in your region. We'll take more of your calls on decriminalization coming up in the next half hour as well. I know David is waiting in North Vancouver. Right now, it's time for a CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. White Rock RCMP say they are now trying to determine if there's conclusive links between two knife attacks in the city in recent days. The latest was last night and ended with the victim dying from his injuries. The suspect is described as a black man about 5'11", wearing a gray hoodie and a hat. On Sunday, a man suffered non-life-threatening injuries after he was stabbed in the same general area. The RCMP say a Kamloops man was arrested in Comox yesterday for abducting two teenagers in Kamloops on Monday. Police say 33-year-old Janos Jukowicz is charged with 2 counts of abduction of a person under the age of 16. The suspect is being held in custody until his next court appearance on Friday. And the Wildfire Service says the Burgess Creek fire remains out of control and has grown slightly to 1,800 hectares. It is classified as continuing to spread despite suppression efforts. An evacuation alert remains in place in the area near the fire. And now the forecast on the north coast. A chance of showers this afternoon. A bit windy with a high of 10. Highs up to 13 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly cloudy with a high of 12. Highs up to 18 and cloudy in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly cloudy with a high of 16 degrees. And cloudy in Greater Victoria this afternoon. A few showers in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley with highs around 13. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. And of course, coming up later on in the afternoon, a lot more on today's top stories for the afternoon show in your region. And in Metro Vancouver, here's what's coming up on the Coast.
Michelle, hello there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I hope you can join us for On the Coast this afternoon. We know that the political pressure is mounting against BC's pilot project to decriminalize hard drugs. We'll hear what lessons BC can learn from Oregon, which has recently reversed their decrim program. We'll talk more about that with a policy researcher today. And you know that friend, the one that you've been meaning to get back in touch with? Well, today on the show, we're going to talk to a psychologist about why it's sometimes harder to keep long-term friendships than it is to make new ones. Join us for those conversations this afternoon on the Coast between 3 and 6.
Gloria, thank you very much. That's Gloria Makarenko with On the Coast. And I do hope you join us Monday here on the program as well. We are going to talk about people leaving BC for Alberta. That's right. Last year, almost 70,000 British Columbians moved to the province next door. That's according to Stats Canada. And so we're going to join up actually with our sister show in Alberta, Alberta at Noon, their own call-in show. We're going to start at 11:30 Pacific. We're calling it Goodbye BC, Hello Alberta, asking you why have you left or are thinking of leaving BC to move to Alberta. And you can email us now, bctoday@cbc.ca. And that program, again, is on Monday, starting at 11:30 Pacific. We've been taking your calls on decriminalization and debate over that is mounting right now, and pressure on the province to either change course or roll things back, asking you if BC should reverse course on decriminalization. And we have some more calls here on the line. David is joining us from North Vancouver. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. You hear me okay?
We sure can. What are your thoughts on how decriminalization is going in BC?
Well, I called generally to ask some questions and make some comments. So I don't feel that the decriminalizing it's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything any more than the measures we have in place are going to do anything now. And as I said to the person who received me on your telephone when I called, there's lots of people in government and lots of people all over trying to think of ways to deal with this, but none of them are working. Okay, and the only way now, I'll tell it. No, this isn't bawling fest. This is me just talking. It's time to talk now. My son died on April 11th. I found him in his home. I was going over there to do some work. We were fixing his place up for him, and I went over there, and I found him, as you would expect, with a needle in his arm and dead, rigor mortis. And so, you know, I'm not the only one who's had this happen to me. I'm not the only parent, and I'm aware of this. So let's just talk about it then. So, okay, so the methods or the sorry, I'm having, and I forget words too lately. You just have to bear with me.
Of course. Understandable.
It's not working. And unfortunately, okay, I got to get my straight thoughts out quick here before I forget them again and get all over the place. It's not working, and we have to come up with a solution. And unfortunately, I'm old. I'm almost 60, and relatively. And so I've seen a lot, and I've seen these things going, and I've seen it all coming, and I've seen how it's progressed in our culture and our society in Canada over the years. And unfortunately, we have modern ways of dealing with things that preclude doing what needs to be done for people who are addicted, which is, in my opinion, and I believe in my Jeffrey's mother's opinion, my son Jeffrey, you can't take away people's rights nowadays, but this is what must be done. As the other caller I heard was saying, we need to build institutions. We need to use older institutions. We have to hustle up and do it because we need places like, people used to go out in there. I'm losing the word again. I can't remember. Not Ocala, but out the psychiatric
Riverview.
Out there. Yeah, places like that, Essendale. They have to have their rights taken away to save them.
Was it hard for you to come to that conclusion?
No, I've been thinking about this for years. They can't help it. This is what it comes down to is, okay, so my son comes back. He's been to treatment centers over the years, thousands and thousands of dollars to try and save him. I realized, last night actually, that I knew he had 50-50 at best, at very best. Even years ago when he was in his teens. Once you get that stuff in a person, certain people, most people, I don't know, all people, it's virtually impossible for them to stay clean because it comes down to 1 second changing your mind in the moment. Okay, he just finished 6 months in Thailand at a really good institution. And he's been back. He was happy, and he was smiling, and we had our Jeffrey back yet again. This was the best one so far. And then, he could not help himself. It has, and all the people who are on the stuff are like that. They can't help themselves. Maybe 1 out of 50 can and will make it. God damn it, the rest of them are going to die, So it's not working, and we have to take away their rights because people must understand this is life and death, And of course, it's very real to me right now. I'm not just hearing about other people's kids; it's my kid, and I never get him back. And we have to move forward and live with that. His sisters, his brother, his mother. Because we're all that's left now, because the oldies have all gone, and I'm glad they didn't live to see this. And one other thing, because I know I'm timing out here, I wanted to say about methadone. Methadone is putting somebody into a circular loop where they'll never get out. He'd take the methadone, and it gives you a little kick, from what I understand, and over the years, but it's not the real thing. It's not that feeling. Like Jeffrey told me one time, he said and it sounds awful, but he said it's like the difference between a falling into a hug and a kiss from your mother, or getting beaten up on the other end of it. So the methadone isn't working. Jeffrey was on the highest dose of methadone that's allowed. His spouse was too. So methadone, I really want to push for myself that methadone is not the answer, and it doesn't really help, except for maybe certain people who has a less hold on or something. But I mean, we just spent 6 months. Jeffrey spent 6 months coming off methadone, and they used other drugs to take him off the methadone, and then they took him off the other drugs, and it took a very long time. And then he went through recovery in a recovery house there with people of the same thing, doing the program, everything. But all it took was 1 second for him to change his mind when he got back home for 5 days, and he was alone in his apartment, and he tried. I've learned now that they try and test it by releasing the tensioner around their arm.
Okay.
But
David, I'm
sorry, have I timed out?
No, you haven't at all. I have plenty of time for you and this story, because I know that you're sharing. You're in the middle of this right now, but I just I think some of those details, perhaps, you may want to just keep them. And I'm just wondering, you are obviously in the middle of your grief. I mean, my goodness, this is just 2 weeks ago, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yep.
I really appreciate your calling, and I'm not jumping in for time. I just want to make sure that you feel okay after you.
Yeah, I'm
finish the
okay.
call. Okay.
No, this is good for me.
Okay.
This
All
is
right.
good for me. I'm telling what I feel truly, and I think it's important. I'm not saying it angrily, and I'm not saying it, as a judgment or anything. I want people to understand that it's not working, and we have to do something radical. And we have to do something out of the modern comfort zone. And we have to do something away from worrying about taking away people's rights.
Okay.
What would you do if somebody wanted to kill themselves? Ultimately, what would you do? You would not let them be by themselves. You would not let them, if they want to kill themselves, you want to stop them, and you use any means at all. Put them in a rubber room. Sorry for being flip, but whatever.
David,
whatever works, but this isn't working, and we have to come up with a real thing.
Okay.
Take away the rights, put them in places
I take
where
your
they can't
point.
hurt themselves.
I take your point,
Okay,
David.
and that's about it.
I do appreciate your
That's all
calling.
I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Okay.
I'm sorry for your loss once again. That's David in North Vancouver. We obviously just heard someone just dealing with a lot of grief right now, a parent who's lost his son Jeffrey to toxic drugs. And I just want to put out the BC Bereavement Helpline. That number is 1-877-779-2223. Again, 1-877-779-2223. That's the BC Bereavement Helpline. We will continue. We've just heard from someone with that personal experience. We'll continue to cover this issue for you here on BC Today. Always, listening to your points of view, whether you are a local business person, you are someone who's lost a loved one to the crisis, you're someone who's going through it yourself, a healthcare worker. We are always open to all of your perspectives and views here on the program. And you can always email us. And that email is bctoday@cbc.ca. It's 12:44 now, 1:44 in the Mountain Time Zone. Well, we're going to end our show talking a little bit about something obviously a lot lighter. And we're going to talk about etiquette now, because there are a lot of questions we ask ourselves, just going on with our day-to-day lives. So perhaps you ask yourself, when it's raining out, you're walking on the sidewalk, why is that person with an umbrella still hogging the awning? Or perhaps when you send a text, how long should you leave someone on red and leave them hanging without actually responding? Or is it okay to ask if you can bring a guest to a wedding? So you could say etiquette has evolved, but a lot of it stays the same too. So we're asking you, what are your own etiquette do's and don'ts? What are your dilemmas, your burning questions about modern etiquette? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And we already have an email from Kathy who writes, "It was and is customary to respond, 'You're welcome,' to an expression of thanks. The commonly used 'no problem' implies that the person expressing thanks is somehow apologizing for having committed a wrong." And Kathy also writes, "Hats and toques are meant to be worn outside and have been customarily removed indoors, especially at the dinner table." Kathy, thanks so much for that. Well, joining me now is Mariah Grumet. She's an etiquette trainer and author of the book, "What Do I Do? Every Wedding Etiquette Question Answered." And Mariah is a founder of Old Soul Etiquette. And Mariah joins me now from New York. Hi there.
Hello, Michelle.
Nice to see you. I have to make sure I'm proper all throughout this interview. A little self-conscious about that, but I came across you.
Judgment-free zone.
Yes, exactly. Well, I love your social media. You post these really great pithy nuggets on etiquette, especially applying to our modern lives. Why do you think that's needed right now?
Thank you, Michelle. I think that in our lives, connection with people is so important. We need each other. We need to be able to communicate with each other. We need the different generations to know how to communicate with each other. And when you think about what etiquette is about, it's all about kindness and respect and being intentional about our thought towards others. And that never goes out of style. And it's arguably needed today more than ever.
Uh-huh. And does etiquette evolve, kind of like language? We always see new words being introduced to the dictionary, like Riz and all of that. So does etiquette evolve in the same way?
Absolutely. If you think about etiquette books back in the 1940s and 50s, there certainly was not a section on cell phone etiquette or email etiquette in the workplace. And so it definitely evolves as our world does.
Uh-huh. What have been your own sort of the questions that you've received that are the most frequent?
I would say a lot of that has to do with social media, technology etiquette, just kind of learning how to navigate these new rules of technology today and having the older generation understand that the younger generation doesn't know a lot about face-to-face communication because they are so attached to their phones and how we can really respect the way that each other, really does things so we can communicate well.
Okay, why do you think it's so generational?
I think technology has a lot to do with it.
Right.
I think, face-to-face communication is becoming less and less common for the younger generations, but with that, it shouldn't go away. We should still be really prioritizing that because you don't get the same connection over the phone that you do face-to-face with someone.
Okay, so what are your own top tips for that communication? Having a real connection. What are the etiquette tips that we can keep in mind?
I think we forget the basics of really taking a moment to look at someone in the eye, to give them our full attention, to really be a good listener, think about follow-up questions, to properly introduce ourselves when we meet someone new. Those things may seem old-fashioned or obvious to some, but it's something we see less and less nowadays that we still really need to prioritize.
Okay. I have some kind of questions for you that are, let's just go through them rapid fire, okay? So I brought up there in the introduction, when you send a text or if you receive a text, how long before you leave a person hanging, before that person starts to feel like, okay, where's the response? Or do you need to respond right away?
So you absolutely do not need to respond right away. I think we're so used to having our phones in our hands all the time, but there still needs to be a boundary, but it's not an email. So I would say within the day or within 24 hours to be able to respond to someone or at least send them a message and say, I've received this. I need to give it some thought. I'll get back to you soon. But we don't want to leave people unread or ghost them as it's common nowadays too.
Yes, exactly. Or those 3 little dots, like when is the sentence coming?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. What about regifting? What are your thoughts on regifting? Because it is a pricey world we live in right now, and trying to buy gifts can feel daunting.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with regifting as long as it's done very carefully and very tastefully. So number one, we want to make sure, we consider who gave us that gift. Is this someone who visits our home often, who will ask about it in the future? Or was this an office secret Santa? You don't even know that person very well. And then when you do choose to regift, make sure that you're regifting in a very different circle. The last thing that we want to do is ever insult the person who gave us a certain gift.
Oh.
But we don't want to be stuck with stuff that really doesn't fit our design personality or something that we won't use and someone may be able to benefit from.
Yes, that would be awkward if you were at the party with the same person who gave you the gift in the first place, and here you are now regifting it. Okay, that's going to come in handy over the holidays. Here's another one that has to do with technology. Okay, so when you're on transit or perhaps at the beach, at a restaurant, and you are listening to something on your phone or watching something on your phone, do you always need to have earbuds on? Can you actually play audio with people around?
You should always have earbuds on, whether you're taking a phone call. You really shouldn't be talking on the phone on public transportation, but things come up. So we want to make sure that we're using earbuds anytime that we're listening to something, anytime that we're around people. It's just an easy way to be courteous to those around us.
Okay, so all right, so no exceptions, not even for keeping your music low or anything like the podcast, just keeping the volume low.
No exceptions. That's headphones for all. We don't want to disturb the people who are sitting with us. People like to do different things on transportation or at the beach, whether that be sleep or listen to their own music. So we just want to be mindful of our personal space and how what we're doing is affecting those around us.
And guess what? Not everybody likes your music. So
Absolutely.
You may think they all do, but perhaps not everybody shares your taste. Tough talk right now from Meera Grumet, an etiquette advisor and trainer and author as well. So we're asking you, do you have any etiquette do's and don'ts? What are your own dilemmas? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Chris is joining us from Cranbrook. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
I am
Thanks
well.
for taking my call.
Sure. Do you have any etiquette do's and don'ts?
Well, it's just a story and maybe a question, maybe. But in Canada, you go to a restaurant or, a shopping store or whatever, and you open up a door for somebody and they'll say thanks and look you in the eye and smile and it doesn't matter their age or anything. I'll do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians that do it.
Mm-hmm. I do,
but
yeah.
I've spent a lot of time working in the U.S. And the Canadian habits just stick with you. And you open the door for these people, and they look at you like, what are you trying to do, rob me?
Really?
Well, they just question it. They have a real quizzical look on their face.
Okay.
And it's totally different between Canadian etiquette
and American.
US
okay.
etiquette.
Chris, you bring up a really good point. Thank you so much for the call. That was a great call from Cranbrook. And Mariah, I don't know if that's true, but that's his experience. But I'm wondering about cultural differences. How are etiquette rules really cut and dry? Because, you think about, different cultural practices.
Absolutely. Etiquette is not only doesn't only differ by culture, but also by geographical location.
Sure.
I will say that I definitely encourage people to open the door. I'm from the U.S. and I encourage people to open the door.
New York, no less. Yeah.
common courtesy, and I hope that we represent ourselves well. But I definitely agree with the statement that some forms of etiquette is very universal. Others definitely depend on culture and geographical location.
Okay. Thanks so much for that, Chris. And Veronica is up next in Oliver. Hi, Veronica.
Hi there. I just thought I'd call in because I heard the tips about face-to-face communication. And I do agree that we all, whatever generation we are, need to do that effectively. What I'd like to point out respectfully is that different generations have different standards for what acceptable face-to-face communication looks like. And that is not always making eye contact or using a proper introduction that we boomers would have used, for example. And there's also a cultural component. So what I don't think we want to do is try to perpetuate a Western colonized generational approach to our face-to-face interactions. Maybe we can learn from other cultures and other generations what works for them. So I just think we have to approach this with caution and not say the only way is, for example, to make eye contact. And that's not necessarily culturally or generationally acceptable, not to mention for people who are neurodiverse, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And perhaps just being accepting of what, how the other person is communicating
How people
with
show
you.
up. Exactly. People get to show up how they get to show up.
Love that. Veronica, thank you very much. Yeah, Mariah, would you like to respond?
Yes, absolutely. We want to be respectful and, accept the way that certain people communicate. And it's not all about, our words, but we want our words and our body language and our tone to work together. And we all communicate differently. So we have those three aspects to use to help us to connect with people.
Susan has a question in Vancouver. Hi, Susan.
Oh, hi. I actually was just at the beach in the evening, and there was a young couple, and they were expressing their affection very vigorously.
Very vigorously. I like that.
And I just wondered, I would rather see people showing affection than fighting, but I'm just wondering, there was a lot of children around, and I just wondered, at what point does it become a little bit like you need a room, or, is it okay, to like really, go all out?
I take it. I take your question, your point, Susan. Thank you very much. I'm tight on time here, but Mariah, in like 30, 40 seconds, what do you think? Is there a limit?
Just being mindful of how we would be affecting others. And so there is a limit, especially if there's children around. We want to be mindful of what they may be seeing and what impact we may have on them.
Yeah, look up maybe and see the people around you. This brought out some interesting questions. Mariah, this is very fulfilling for you, I take it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you joining us. I have a feeling we'll talk again because these are all evolving, as you said. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle.
That is Mariah Grumet, who is an etiquette trainer, author of What Do I Do? Every Wedding Etiquette Question Answered, and founder of Old Soul Etiquette. You can send us more questions, bctoday@cbc.ca.